So in the Mamer of the Friedrich Rebbe, that the Rebbe is basing this Mamer, which is the Divir HaMaschil Adon Olam. It's in Perik Hey. So the Friedrich Rebbe says, Dal Yidei Maisa HaMitzvahs Nase Binyan HaKelim Dezo Vegam Hamshochas Ha'oir BeHaKelim Dezo. That through the act of mitzvahs, when we do mitzvahs, we are building the vessels of Zoh. That's the Evorim, the Malko, in the level of Zoh Zeir Ampin. We built the limbs through the Maisa HaMitzvahs, and also, so we create the Kalim, and we also bring light. V'gam hamshachas ha'oir ba'kelim dezo, and we also draw down the light in the vessels of Zoh. So this idea that the Friedrich Rebbe talks that Maimер, the Rebbe connects to the idea that he was talking before in the previous Maimер that he said in Erev Rosh Hashanah. Over there, the Rebbe explained that all the mitzvahs we do, and including Tkiyas Shofar, is in order to be mamshich and built, as the Friedrich Rebbe says, through the mitzvahs we built. And therefore, when Yom Tov comes on Rosh Hashanah, we don't have to build the level of shofar, and that's why it's not so important to blow it. That's why the Chachamim took away Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah Shechali is b'Shabbos, because the mitzvahs that we do are there in order to build and to bring down the hamshachas milmailo, and sometimes the hamshacha that we're doing and we're bringing down milmailo is already there by itself through Shabbos. And in the Beis Hamikdash, he explained they were mamshech a higher level, which Shabbos doesn't have in itself. So the Rebbe says, "Inyan ze shayich gam l'hascholas hahemshech." Rosh Hashanah, this is also connected to the beginning of the Hemshech. The Friedrich Rebbe started that Hemshech with the Maimir of Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah Shechaliz b'Shabbos b'Migdash Hayu Teikim Avolei b'Medina. That when Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbos, only in the Beis Hamikdash would they blow shofar, but not outside of the Beis Hamikdash, not b'Medina, not in Yerushalayim or elsewhere. This is written in the Mamer of the Tzemach Tzedek that the Rebbe said in the previous Mamer, Olam Yusada Mamer, Shenemer Erev Rosh Hashanah. That is what the Mamer of Erev Rosh Hashanah was based on. Hatam Alma Sheberesh Hashanah Shechali is B'Shabbos Ein Teikim B'Medina. The reason why on Rosh Hashanah that comes on Shabbos we don't blow in the places outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the Medina, it's the same idea, because what the Friedrich Rebbe mentioned over here in the Mamer Adon Olam, that the mitzvahs are there to be mamshich things, and sometimes you don't need it. So he explains it. It's Tzedek. Atam Amashev Rishon Shachali B'Shayim Tekem Medina Kamitzvah Shalonu Hu Bichdei Shal Yidei Yisrusa Dultato Yisrusa Leil. Our mitzvahs is in order that through our arousal of below, when we do the mitzvah below, we Isarusa Dileila, we arouse from above. Shal Yidei Asiyas HaMitzvahs Deha Adam Nasim HaMitzvah Shalamaylo, through the act of the mitzvahs that the person does, that makes up the mitzvah above. The mitzvah above is the spiritual counterpart. The mitzvah above is the limbs, of the king, is the kelim of Atzilus, of Zoh. Ramach, when we do a mitzvah, That's from the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimon that the Rebbe Chazard in the before. Sha'idei asisa mitzvah Adon. When you do a mitzvah, na'asim ha-mitzvah shalamaylo. You make up the mitzvahs. What are the mitzvahs? The mitzvahs are the limbs of the king. That's the level of binyan of Zoh. Ramach pikudim inun ramach evorin the malka. As we say from the Zohar, that the 248, the Kunei Zohar, we say the 248 in the Zohar, that the 248 limbs are the 248 limbs of the king. The limbs of the king in the level, so those are the mitzvahs of Hashem. And when we do a mitzvah, we built that. So now shofar is a mitzvah, and I explained in the Mamer, in previous Mamer from the Tzemach Tzedek, the Kamekein who gam b'mitzvahs tkiyas shofar. This is also true with the mitzvah of tkiyas shofar. She'inyana, what's the idea of blowing shofar? To make the shofar of above. The mitzvah of shofar makes the shofar as above, just like every mitzvah creates the limb of above, the pikudim, the vorim the malka. Rosh Hashanah, that was explained before the Maimon. Rosh Hashanah, shachal b'Shabbos, ein toikin b'Medina. That's why Rosh Hashanah, when it comes on Shabbos, we don't need to blow in Medina. Why? Because this level of shofar above, that is supposed to be created through the shofar de lamato avedas Adon, which is, what is the shofar shalamayla? That's the level of above, which is called b'chinas hatainu. The shofar creates the level of tainug, as the Rebbe explained. It doesn't need, even without the service of the person, Shabbos comes the level of tainug on its own, mitzad Shabbos. And since Shabbos hare mekadsha b'kaima, Shabbos has the sanctity and stays, unlike Yom Tov, which you need to be mekadosh. But it's Shabbos is inherently, every Shabbos has the kedusha. The seventh day is mekadosh v'kaima, and memela, because our avodah of tkiyas shofar is to bring down the tainug of lemaila and Shabbos, which is already tainug, without the person's avodah. So because of a gzera derabba, small gzera, they pushed it away. The Shabbos had a mekadsha v'kaima. So therefore, we don't need the shofar. The Rebbe explained, why do we blow even Rosh Hashanah shechal b'Shabbos? Is lefi shebemigdosh, in the place of the Beis Hamikdosh, zeh shar hashamayim, that's the gate to the heaven. Hoya nesinas koyach lasis bechina nailis yoser b'hatayim. There was a power given to the people in the Beis Hamikdosh. They can make up even a greater level in Tainug, what Shabbos does not provide on its own. The avodah of blowing the shofar in the Beis Hamikdosh, the Shara Shamayim, that high level, brings and is mamshich a higher level than the level of mekadsha v'kaima. As the Rebbe commission is Bayer Barucha Ba'Mamer der Rosh Hashanah, as explained at length in the Mamer at Rosh Hashanah, and the Rebbe also explained that in Shabbos there is two levels. There is the level of tainug of Shabbos by itself, but then there is v'karosel Shabbos and then is kol ha'ma'aneges Shabbos. There's the higher level of tainug, and the avodah of tkiyas shofar on Shabbos is higher in the Beis Hamikdosh, is higher than all the levels of tainug that we have from Shabbos alone, and even without the avodah of Shabbos. So the avodah of Rosh Hashanah in the Beis Hamikdosh, Shara Shamayim, brings down even a higher level, and that's why In the Mikdash, they would blow. So, but back to our subject matter, that we're talking about our mitzvah is the one that prompts and brings out the mitzvah Milo. The inyan zeh, and this idea that mitzvah so inyonim shalamaylo nasim davke ali de kiyum hamitzvah the Adon. That these matters of above become through the observance of mitzvah of the person. Ubechol habechinas, ubechol habechinas, bechol hapartzufim, bechol seder ha'ishtalshelus. This is in all levels and all faces, partzufim. This is the different level of partzufim of the whole seder of ishtalshelus. So, which means the mitzvah's impact and their consequences are all of the above of the mitzvahs. They come from the mitzvahs of the Adam. The person's mitzvah brings down this level throughout Seder Ishtalshlus. And Kitoris Rav Magid, as the teaching of Magid, which means to say, it's not only something that we're mamshich the tainug for the person, his avodah, somehow the level that your mamshich tainug brings down to the one level, but this is actually important for all of Ishtalshlus. Kitoris Rav Magid, like the teaching of the Rav Magid Bepirush HaMishnah. He translated Mishnah, Da mal lemaylo mimoch, know what's above you. So normally we say what's above you, know what's above, but the Magid teaches mimcho, da mal lemaylo mimcho, the kol masha lemaylo mimcho. Everything that goes up above is from you. So it's not like some things you impact and something you don't impact. The Yid, his mitzvahs, his actions impact kol seder ishtalshlus. The b'chi nasat tainug, shofar shalamaylo. That level of tainug, which is the shofar. We blow shofar, we create tainug of above. Nasis kenal al yidei kiyum mitzvahs kiyah shofar. That, as mentioned before, comes through the mitzvahs kiyah shofar. We blow the shofar. Shofar is a level of tainug, is mamshich tainug. And for that matter, the other level, tainug, is higher than the level of chokhmah binah. And we talk about, we have rotzen and we have tainug. The tainug is the pnimius harotzen. So the tainug comes from shofar. And where is the building of the chokhmah? That comes through tefillin. And the level of moichin, who creates the level of moichin above? Shuyin tefillin. That is the idea of tefillin. Ki yadu, as it's known, the daled haparshiyas, the four portions, hey bechinas, daled moichin. Those are the three moichin, the chokhmah bin adas, and the way it becomes a moichin shebimidas nase al yidei ki mitzvos tefillin. That takes place through mitzvos tefillin. Al yidei she'odom maniach tefillin oisa she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu maniach tefillin. When a person puts tefillin, he makes the Eibishter puts on tefillin. What does it mean? The Eibishter puts on tefillin. That it creates those level of moichin which are from tefillin. V'cheinu gam b'hamidus. The same thing is, so we're having tainug. Tainug is shofar. Moichin is midah, is tefillin. And what about the emotion, the midas? V'cheinu gam b'hamidus. The zo, the also midas of zeir ampin. The idea sha'odom shalomata mekayim mitzvahs v'haftus Hashem alikecha. When the person below fulfills the mitzvah of loving Hashem, u'mitzvah says Hashem alikecha tira, and the mitzvah of fearing Hashem, and these mitzvahs are essential. The Abba v'yirahem asherish l'chol mitzvahs. The love and fear of Hashem is the root for all mitzvahs. All mitzvahs have to be done with love and fear. Nasal yidei zeh habin zo. That's how you create zo. So Tainug is created through shofar. Moichin, Chabad, the Moichin Atzilus are created through tefillin, and the midos are created through Abba V'Yira, but all mitzvahs. But Abba V'Yira is the shaydish of all the mitzvahs. So the Abba V'Yira, all the mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs, correspond to the 613 Evon in the Malko in building Zoh. Okay, so now we build Moichin, we build Tainuk, we build Moichin, we build Midas, but how are we going to build Malchus? The same thing is we built Malchus too. The binyan olam hadibur Malchus, because to build the world of speech, which is Malchus, Malchus is b'dvar melech shulta, the idea of dibur. Nase al yidei hadibur shel ha'odam hatachton b'divrei Torah v'divrei tefillah. That is built. Malchus is built through the speech of the person below when he speaks words of Torah and words of tefillah, and that builds Malchus. So now we have the mitzvahs. All mitzvahs building Zo, tefillin Abba V'Yira, that's all mitzvahs. Zo is, then you have Moichin built by tefillin, Dibur Torah mitzvah builds Malchus, and Shofar builds Tainuk. So this is the content, this is the mitzvahs. Every mitzvah builds something. Based on what's explained in Mamer. The levels of above, generally speaking, so we divided a little bit, but generally speaking, it's the number Ramach. It's the Ramach Yevon the Malko. That's 248 limbs of the king. So that would be the Ramach mitzvos, say, the 248 mitzvos. Obinyan Kol Habchinas Shalomaylahu. So generally, all the limbs, all the levels of above are divided in 248. How do we build all the levels of above? Why they keep Ramach mitzvos through the person fulfilling the 248 mitzvahs. He built the human being, his mitzvahs doing, builds the 248 mitzvahs above. And this is what the pasuk says. Va'asisem oiso. So normally we say do the mitzvahs, but here we're saying Vasisam Atem, you do them, you make the mitzvahs. Mailin Alechem Kilo Asuni. I consider it after you have made me up. Because we create Hashem by doing the mitzvahs, it's from the Zohar, and we are building up and we're making Hashem. What means making Hashem? Means making the structure, making the Chabad, the Chagas, and Malchus, and Tiny. We're creating this whole thing. How? Through our actions and through our doing the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs have 248 mitzvahs. Generally speaking, we're building 248 limbs. We're building the king, the Asuni, that comes through the act of mitzvahs. And that's what the Rebbe spoke about earlier. That's why shofar on Rosh Hashanah, Shechal b'Shabbos, isn't necessary, because that level of Tainug is automatically nimshach just because of Shabbos. But in the Beis HaMikdash, it came a higher level, as the Rebbe explained earlier. But so now it turns out that why are we doing the mitzvahs? What is the purpose of the mitzvahs? To build. But the Rebbe said there's a higher level doing the mitzvahs because they're a level of Ratzon Hashem, not because through the mitzvahs are built something. And the Rebbe will explain that there is basically two categories. There is a category of building that we can build the mitzvah, and then there is another higher level. When the Yid actually does the mitzvah, he brings down a much higher level than just the mitzvah that he built. And that's why at that level, we're not doing a mitzvah because the mitzvah builds something. Let's look inside and we'll see how the Rebbe explained this. Dalet. So we need to understand this. But it's known. The That what is the advantage, the greatness when we do mitzvahs? Ukishakim hu mipnei shezehu tzivu HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you fulfill the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is Hashem's command. Ukenusach birchas mitzvahs asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu, as we say in the language, when before we make a mitzvah, we say, one who has sanctified us with the mitzvahs and commanded us. So basically, essentially, mitzvahs are there because not building anything, not because of building, but commands. Listen to Hashem. V'loi mitzad hatam v'hazgula shabahem. So the reason we were told this mitzvah, why we do the mitzvah, because that's what Hashem commanded, and not because of the reason and the special zgula that it has, the opportunity that koilel, which also would include no special no special zgula, no special omen, no special quality. Koilel gam hatam. Also, not the reason for the mitzvahs we're doing above. So, mitzvahs, here we're depending and we're saying that the mitzvahs does something, and on Rosh Hashanah it doesn't do, we don't need it, and we're all working through what it accomplishes. But mitzvahs really are much higher than just seemingly accomplishing something. They're just mitzvahs of the Eibush. They're over there. The oldest reasoning that we're giving over here on Shabbos, it happens by itself. That's if we are considering the mitzvahs what they do. But if we consider the mitzvahs of Rosh Hashem, that seems to be on a higher level. Here we seem to bring the mitzvahs down to the level of what it builds. So we can say the explanation, the mitzvahs, that when we talk about the mitzvahs, which is harotzin v'hatzivui, the lemailo shebnei Yisrael yikaimu mitzvahs. What does it mean? When we have a mitzvah, mitzvah is a command, which means the commander, the Eibishter, has a desire and he instructs for a certain mitzvah, that the Yidden should do the mitzvah. The level where the Eibishter has a wish, a rotzen, a desire, and a command for Yidden to do the mitzvahs. So there, yesh shnei inyonim. So there is two aspects over here, two matters over here. Hasiba v'hatam al hatzibui. You have the cause and the reason why Hashem commanded it. That's still a level which has reasoning, has a cause, and in that level, that brings down the lower level of mitzvah. And Mitzias ha-mitzvah tzivui. That creates the entity of the mitzvah of the tzivui, that there should be a command to do something. Shehu misuvav mehatam. That mitzvah is a consequence, a result from the reason. So the Eibishter's reason, level of tainuk to be mamshech, to build, whatever the reason is the cause why he's giving the mitzvah. Okay, but what happens once the Yid does the mitzvah? There's a new area here. Now the mitzvah goes into a higher place than even the reason for making the mitzvah in the first place. The second area is after the command of above. So then comes the observance that the person does it. There's the mitzvah, the command. Now we have a command standing there, but that's not yet the person doing it. Then the second aspect of it, the person does it. Okay, so basically the Shnei Yonim are to create the mitzvah and for the Yid to do the mitzvah. And these two aspects, why we do the mitzvah, we have two areas. Either we do the mitzvah because of the reason. But they have here two general ways. The first way is that you fulfill it for the purpose of the command. That's it, because you want to fulfill the reason for the tzivui. That's on one level. That is why the Eibishter commanded us, and when we do it, we fulfill that tzivui. That's the level in which we do a mitzvah because of a purpose. That's one level. So again, we have the mitzvah, the reason for the mitzvah that creates a mitzvah. Then we have the actually doing of the mitzvah. Now, when we do the mitzvah, we can do it in two ways. Either that through the mitzvah, it is fulfilled the purpose why the Eibishter had the reason for commanding the mitzvah. That would be like the level of Tainuk, the level of Chochmah Bina, whatever the bill. But there's a second way to fulfill it. You observe it in even a higher way. The key of that his fulfillment of the mitzvah is in such a way that way he, so to speak, makes up a new will. Now there he created a new will which is uncomparably greater, higher than that rotzin that came from the reason. So a rotzin was created because of a reason, but there's a new rotzin. There's the mitzvah. You created another level, a higher level of rotzin. How is that possible? Since Yidden are rooted in Atzmus, who is the master of the will, which that's a place where we say Yisrael u'malka b'chidoi, in a place where Hashem and the Yidden are alone. That's the highest level. So the Yid in that level, Yisrael mekayim mitzvah, that's when a Yid fulfills a mitzvah. He has the ability to create a new will. He creates a rotzen by Hashem that wasn't before, and that new rotzen created. That's not for any reasons. That's not a reason. That's a rotzen. The rotzen of the reason that comes. That's why we have a rotzen. But this is higher than the rotzen. The Rebbe says now that these two levels, the rotzen that comes before the mitzvah, and then there's a new rotzen that's created once the Yid does the mitzvah. So the Rebbe says this is also can be explained in this statement of our sages. It says, the two interpretation in the sayings of our sages of blessed memory, that nachas ruach lefonai sha'amarti v'nasir, that it is a delight, a pleasantness before me that I said, and my will was done. So in the simple meaning that Hashem said, gave the mitzvah, and we do it, that brings Hashem pleasantness. But there's another shot is that once Hashem said, Nase, we make up Ritzoni. So let's see inside. Pirush Aleph, who one explanation is Shalidei Kiyum HaMitzvah Niskayim Harotzin Hatzivu Shohoye B'tchila. That through the observance of the mitzvah, the wish of the Eibishter that was in the beginning was fulfilled. Pirush HaBeiz Ben Nasir Ritzoni, who And the second interpretation is that kiyum ha-mitzvah di Yisrael. Is that through the observance of the mitzvah that they didn't do, like the second way, which that mitzvah, which is the second level of mitzvah, we create new mitzvah. Nas and ischadish rotzul chodesh, that makes up. It's a renewed, a new will. That was never before. Similar to what's explained in many places. So literally, it means you do what Hashem wants. You do what Hashem wants, but there's an interpretation. Oisim, you make up a rotz shel mokem. The pirush oisim hu, sheoisim rotz chodesh. You make a new rotz. So the Rebbe says this is the two maimorim. In some it says we're doing it in order to build malchus or build the nyonim above, and the other one it says that you do for the rotz, just the rotz in itself. That it's based on these two levels of rotz. When the Maimorim say that what the idea of mitzvahs is through them, we make up the mitzvahs of above. Of the kiyum ha-mitzvahs. That's the first way of observing mitzvahs. That's the level of fulfilling the rotzen that comes as a result from the reason. That the rotzen that came from the reason, that's what the Maimorim say that we're building. The whole Seder Ishtalshelus, so that there should be the building of the entire Seder Ishtalshelus, Ramachim and the Malchus, the 248 limbs of the king. And over here too, so we have over here we have two inyonim. We have the mitzvah above, and then we have the mitzvah that you should actually do it. Within the mitzvah that come from the reason, there's two aspects. Aleph hatam v'asiba daratzen. One, the reason and the cause of the ratzon. That creates the mitzvah, the level of above. And the second thing you need to do, based on the result of it, the rotzin is the creation of that will, and the mesubav is that he does it. That the will, so the will is split into two, split into the mitzvah above, and is split into the way that the Yidden should do it. But the doing the mitzvahs because Yidden are rooted in Atzmi, who last is Rotzen Chodesh. That is to make a whole new Rotzen. And this is what's explained in many Maimorim. That what is the advantage of observing a mitzvah? Is because this is the will of Hashem. And also, but not because of a reason. Which also includes the reason that through the mitzvahs fulfilling, you make the mitzvahs above. Also, that reason is not acceptable. Those Maimorim say it's just because it's a mitzvah. Because those Maimorim, that rotzen that the Maimorim talk about, that's a rotzen is higher than reasoning. And then when you do that higher, the new will that you created, the mitzvahs, and you do the mitzvahs because of the new will that you created, because just because Hashem's will, you made up the mitzvah as asiyas hamitzvah to making up vasisem oisam. You make up huloi bichdei lifel inyonim l'maylo. That's not in order to accomplish and do things above. Ki'im mitzvah meloshim tzavsa v'chibur. That's only mitzvah, a mitzvah command to connect. Tzavsa v'chibur, togetherness and connection. Hayichud Yisrael in Balarotz, the union of Yidden with the master of the will. Vad layichud im atzmus, to the extent unite with the atzmus, with Hashem himself. Derech Mamer Adon Olam, this is similar to the saying of the Alter Rebbe, Ich will ze gar nicht. See, I don't want anything. Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden. I don't want your Gan Eden. Ich will nicht dein Elam Haba. I don't want your world to come chuli. Ich will mehr nicht as dich allein. I only want you alone. That is the connection. That's the Balarotzen. That's the reason for the mitzvah, not because building. So there is the reason for the mitzvah, which creates the mitzvah, and the person doing the mitzvah. But then there's a high level doing the mitzvah because of that's the higher level of Ratzon, and that's the connection that you get with the Baal HaRatzon. And that's why in those Maimorim it says, no, not even for the most loftiest idea, not even to build, just to connect with Hashem. As the Rebbe will continue.